All right, what's good, everybody? We are live and we are ready to go. We're going to have a great discussion about the future of Black conservatism and specifically the Maj Touré's Black conservative panel at CPAC last weekend. You saw my other videos on it. You've seen me write about it. But now I feel it's time to bring in some other voices so we can keep the conversation going. So without further ado, first I'm going to introduce my friend, my token white guy, Ross Schumann. What's going on, brother?
I'm glad you said that. I didn't want people to be worried that the contrast on their monitors all of a sudden went out. Right? Like I have lights on, but they're not that bright. I want everybody to know that. So I am actually Caucasian. It's not just
Correct.
Jeff screwing up the color contrast over here. No, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the invite. I got invited over Sonny Johnson. I just want to say that. I want to make that publicly known.
No.
He invited this white guy over Sonny Johnson. So just Sonny, if you're watching, just know that.
She is watching. I just saw a tweet about it. She's guilting me about it. Now she's not going to let me live it down. That's messed up.
The reason you didn't see that bus is I had already thrown you right underneath it.
You threw me under it and then backed it right back over me. That's cold-blooded. Next, we have from Atlanta, Georgia, Corey Frazier. What's good, brother?
What's going on, family? How y'all doing? I'm gonna share with Ross that I feel highly favored. That I got picked over Sonny Johnson. Sonny, we love you to death, but we definitely gonna keep throwing Jeff under the bus tonight.
That is cold-blooded. You guys, I thought you guys like me.
You my guy. But hey, you gotta feel pretty special, to get picked over Sonny. So.
All right. And last but most certainly not least, also from Atlanta, Georgia, we have the lovely Felecia Killings. What's good, sis?
Hello, my brother. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Good. Okay, so you're not going to throw me under the bus. I appreciate that.
No, brother. I'm not going to do that to you.
It has already been done.
Yeah. Steam road.
Yeah, I got hit by 2 buses. That's cold. That's cold.
Yeah.
All in love.
Of course. That's tough love. Yeah. The type that leaves giant tire tracks on your back. But yeah, so let's just get into it. I mean, I know all of y'all have seen the Maj Touré's panel. I want to just get your initial thoughts. So let's go with you first, Felecia. What were your initial thoughts on that panel? Good, bad, or ugly?
Brilliant, beautiful, fire. It was like going to church, but in a conservative space. I loved it. I loved how Maj moderated everything. I loved how he was so gracious in inviting all those other voices to use that time and to bring what I consider the conscious conservative message to that platform. I'm just so excited to see that Sonny Johnson was on the mainstream, platform, because that's what we need right now. And I've been telling beloveds, I said, if you really want to have some really great outreach on the ground, I need Sonny Johnson to have the mainstream platform. I need to be able to tell Black voters, see, we have somebody over here who's not like the other face that I guess we'll talk about later. But
Good. And you mentioned a conscious conservative voice. For those for the uninitiated, give a quick explanation of what conscious conservatism is.
Yeah, so conscious conservatism, we are very cognizant of our values, of our history. We love conservatism. We're not afraid to embrace being Black in the Black history, the Black culture. We're very conscious of it. And for that reason, we just show how conservatism is injected in the social, political, and economic spaces. And even though we attach, if you want to say Black to it, that's just because we love being Black. We love our identity. We're not in this space to be colorblind or to say, forget about all of that. Let's just be American. No, that's not really, how things are. So we're very conscious about that. And I love how Sonny just brought that fire. She was just on it. So.
Good, good. So for you, Corey, and just to give some context, you normally vote Democrat. That you voted for Biden, and you voted down the ticket for you voted blue down the ticket. Now, from what I understand, you don't necessarily hate the Republican Party. You don't dislike, or I would say, you don't dislike the Republican Party more than like normal, right? I mean, you don't necessarily hate Trump. You don't hate Republicans, but you do vote Democrat. So as somebody who votes Democrat, but will also still hold Democrats accountable, how did that panel strike you? What was your reaction to it?
For me, it was what people like myself, disgruntled Democratic voters, been looking for a long time, especially Black conservatives, like Felecia hit on a minute ago. It's like, for us, that Black part means something, right? We don't want to just be conservative, just be Republican or whatever. That means a lot, because when you say that you're a Black conservative, first you're identifying with me as a Black individual living in the Black community. And the second part of that is the conservatism, which we all have those values. I always talk about that. As Black people, we're raised on those values. The difference is we just, for the majority, we vote differently than that. But me seeing that panel and watching it and listening to the mess, especially once again, like Sonny, I had the privilege of going to Maj Torres. That's how I met Felecia at the Solutionary Summit. So I got to talk with him, even Angela Stanton King. You get to see that Blackness first, and then they walk into the conservatism through their actions. So for me, it was something that we've been wanting to see for a very long time, but we also know that always gets stumped out by the crazies. They always highlight the crazies, and you have to really dig deep in the conservative party to find those kind of voices to give you understanding about where you want to be in the future here in this country as a Black person.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So what I'm hearing is like there's maybe a little bit of a cause for optimism, but still got a ways to go, right? Would that be fair to say? In order to attract somebody like yourself?
I mean, that's fair. I mean, because like I said, I'm not against the Republican Party, right? The difference is it doesn't feel welcoming to somebody like myself. I mean, I explained it, and I'll be real terse, is that I'm from Flint, Michigan. That's where I'm born and raised at. Now I live down here in Atlanta. So all I know is the Black community. This is what I know. And I love it. Don't get it twisted. I love where I'm from. I love where I live at. I love being around my people and stuff like that. And we understand that most of the policies that affect us in these communities come from people that are not Republicans. But the difference is we can't hitch our wagon to those people who have this message because they're not put out in the forefront for us to connect to, like the Sonnies, like the Majas, like yourself, and a lot of other people that's out there. But we get, which I'm not gonna say their names, we get those folks easily. They hand it to us and like, listen to this person, this is what you should do. And it's like, no, I'm cool with that one. No, I'll stay where I'm at then. If this is what y'all offering, no.
Right, gotcha. And yeah, we'll dive more into that a little bit later. Brother Ross, what did you think? How did it hit you?
So honestly, I liked it because what I think and I think Felecia hit on this, and I think Corey hit on this, is that it highlighted the differences in the perspectives. That there is, we like to say that there is no one way to be one thing or another. Well, there's no one way to be conservative. There's no one way to be a Black conservative. There's no one way to be a white conservative. I always say if you put 10 Catholics in a room, you're going to get 10 different ideas on Catholicism. Right? Mm-hmm. People are very close knit and we agree on a lot of things, but we're going to disagree on some things, and that's fine. We can disagree and we can discuss our disagreements, and our disagreements might just be about how to enact a certain policy, what's the best way, or what's the best law to push this moment, or things of that nature. But at the end of the day, we have to highlight all the voices. And I thought Maj did a great job of that because he did say it, hey, this was, somebody said this was going to be his platform, and he decided to spread that platform and bring those different voices on. Unfortunately, Corey hit on something that's very true. And I said this to Felecia earlier today, the 1% rule. I live by that 1% rule. And unfortunately, I think for white conservatives, often we see a very vocal minority of white conservatives who are still holding some remnants of the past. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. If you want to say it politically, is that those people are very loud, and they're very in your face, and they're very, very upfront about who they are, but they don't represent people like me or what I would say is a lot of white conservatives. But at the same time, I understand where for a lot of people on the outside, they see that, and it's going to make them take pause, and it's going to make them say, well, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. And it might not be that you don't agree with us politically. It just might be that you don't want to be with people who don't want you around. So if people are telling you we don't want you here, it's awfully hard for you to want to be there.
So let me ask you this. I mean, as far as white conservatives go, and the ones that you're talking about, I mean, what do you think inspires that attitude that they exhibit towards Black Americans? And let's take the racism part out of it. I know that there are people who are just legitimately racist on their side, and that's just it. I'm talking for the ones who may not be racist.
So I think for a lot of people, right, like they keep hearing this rhetoric come out about Black America, about the way, Black populations are. And, and there's a stigma for a lot of white conservatives who, as I told you before, didn't grow up around the Black community. And what they know of the Black community is what they get from the media, what they get from the news. And the 1% rule, and for those who don't know what the 1% rule, my rule of thumb is that 1% of any demographic across the board, break it up any way you want to do it. Break it up by religion, break it up by race, break it up by gender, break it up by any which demographically category you want to cut into. 1% of that category is horrible. And they do really awful stuff, but they're going to get 99% of the attention. And because of that, every other category, when they see anything about that category, they go, oh, well, looky there. That's them doing that crap again, whether it be Catholics, right? Catholics, it's all, pedophilia and blah, blah, blah. And we see what the media wants us to see. We see the narrative. And of course, bad news sells more than good news. So when we see that, when white conservatives see that, and they don't get to experience what real Black people are like, which I told you for me really was getting into the military, was for me that first real experience with a large segment of Black America and learning that, wait, we're not all that different, right? There's a lot of similarities here. There's a lot of things we can agree on. We might disagree on a few, we may have different taste in food. We may have different taste in women. We may have different religion, yada, yada, blah, but all that's subjective. All that is non-vital to the conversation. But what I can see is that these are good, hardworking people who are just like me, just trying to make a living, trying to put food on the table, trying to take care of their kids, trying to do what the best they can do. And they don't want to be in the news. They want to be out of the news. And because of that, you don't ever hear their stories until you meet those people in person.
Yep. And you touched on something very important there, especially when it comes to the media. And as somebody who is in conservative media, I can tell you that we do this. Now, there are a lot of us who try to resist the temptation to do what it's a practice called nut picking. It means that you look at one group, you only focus on the nuts that are there, and you showcase them, you highlight them, you give them the microphone, and then it makes the entire group look like the nut jobs. So I can tell you that is true. I try to avoid doing that, and I know a lot of other journalists do also try to avoid doing it, but most don't. And I think a lot of them don't even realize that they're doing it. And that's part of the problem as well. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've heard what you've said from other white conservatives as well. I mean, they have a certain perspective based on what they've seen on television or in movies or on the news or what have you. So I think that's yet another reason why this panel was important, because conservative media tends to, like Shamika Michelle has said, they highlight one type of conservative, but they don't highlight other conservative voices. So what would you say on the panel, Felecia? What part stood out to you the most?
Well, number one, Sonny's discussion about Black men and making a strong appeal to that demographic. This is not to in any way disparage Black women, because we all know Sonny loves Black women. Okay, so she'll elevate us at any moment. But when it comes to selling, I guess you could say, conservatism, The most receptive to that at this point would be Black men, mostly because they are strongly conservative, very much so believe in traditional values. They love economics. They love capitalism. These are just the love language, as Julian would say. So that was number one for me. Number two was Shamika's Carlton will analogy. And I think she did such a fire job in bringing that to the forefront. And I want to highlight here that while some folks are trying to pretend like she was talking about the Blexiteers, she wasn't. She was talking about a different breed of Black conservatives who relate to other individuals, perhaps those who were a part of my culture growing up, where we were actually affiliated with a lot of white individuals. Back home in California, we were multi-ethnic, but my sister and I, we attended private school and we were like the only Black kids there. So in that respect, I could relate absolutely to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air conservative analogy, if you will. So I thought that was excellent. And I love that the conversation is still going on related to it. She did a phenomenal job there. I also enjoyed Adrian's talk about Trump's appeal to Black men as well. And so that's what I keep pushing. I'm like, beloveds, and that's one of the things I kept pounding towards Trump's Black camp. I say, you guys got to appeal to Black male voters. And in the last stretch, they did it. They were able to increase that voting block for Trump. And we saw that. And I'm just like, if you continue to build upon it, you're going to see those kinds of results. So I look forward to seeing what else will come up. I'm not quite convinced that Black men voted for Republicans. I'm more so convinced that they voted for Trump. And that's something that folks really need to pay attention to. How can the GOP get in position to where they are attracting Black men in particular? And then I would say even traditional Black women who believe in the social structure that relates to conservatism. That would be the next step.
Gotcha. So that brings up a question that I have for you, Corey. I mean, because Trump did do better among Black men than he did previously. He did actually better than his predecessors did as well. But you didn't vote for him. So what was that he didn't do to earn your vote in particular?
It wasn't what he didn't do in particular. It was, not just be blunt, it was what Joe Biden said at the acceptance speech. Like I constantly emphasize is that I in the primaries, I didn't vote for Joe Biden. I didn't even look twice at that, right? But when he said, which we already know, his campaign was in the doldrums. It was over with till he went to South Carolina. And it's until Jim Clyburn had lifted him up, Black people got behind him. And when he got that nomination, not all the policy parts that he's talking about, when he specifically spoke to Black people, said the African-American community, you have always stood behind me. You had my back. I won't forget it. And that was the first time I heard directly like that, because you really owe that. If it wasn't for Black people after South Carolina, you would be done right now. So I heard that, and I wanted to vote for that based on my community, not necessarily for myself. Once again, I emphasize Flint, Michigan, live in Atlanta. I know where I live at. And so with him saying that, it's like, okay, how can we take that message that he was talking to Black people and translate it to tangibles here in the Black community? And that's what it was. It wasn't that, like, I didn't even have a lesser two evil situation. It just was something that he said that sparked my interest.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it was. I'd be honest with you. If that platinum plan, I'll tell you this, I had one gripe, and it was with the platinum plan, how it was rolled out 30 days before the election. If that would have been rolled out 6 months before the election, a year before the election, or before the midterms, right, it would have been a different story with myself. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other Black men that wanted to vote over there, but that item, which was a tangible item, came 30 days before the election. So I saw it as, okay, he wasn't really serious for that much, but that was the optics of it. That was the perception of it, because how it was rolled out.
Gotcha. I see. So one really quick question on this, because I heard I was listening to you on the Wasted Talent podcast, and you said that about how Joe Biden acknowledge that he got to where he was because of the Black community. Now, when he made those promises, like, did you feel like you believed them, or did you just feel like maybe he's just the most likely to do it, or were you skeptical, or how did you feel about that promise that he made?
That this would be, I felt like, okay, because he threw that out there. Like, I'll give an analogy. It ain't gonna go too well with a lot of people, right? But I think it's a fair assessment, okay?
Okay.
With the Million Man March, right? Before that was even put together, Minister Farrakhan said, what if I called 1 million people? When he put it out there, he had to live up to that promise. And 2 million Black men showed up on the mall in DC in 1995. He knew he couldn't reel it back. So this is how I kind of saw it with Joe Biden. You threw that out there. You owe us. You won't forget. Now, as Black people, let's grab those words, just that right there, and let's make him, not, I ain't gonna say make him, but let's make him live up to the debt that he promised that he owed us. I'll put it like that. And that's, like I said, it was just those words, those few words. Not that I trust the rest of his agenda, you know, or his administration, or even the Democratic Party for that matter. It's those few words that he said that I was like, okay, let's make this guy live up to that. Gotcha.
Okay. So you felt it would be easier to hold him to what he said. Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
I mean, because if I just real quick, because I can even a parallel to, I mean, when Trump came in, well, let me be honest, Trump really pushed a vote for Black people, right? Whether people went to it or not or fell for it, he did do that. He did try to court the Black vote. And when he got in office, he did certain things that helped out, you know, the Black community. But like as Sonny always explained, when it did come down to the locals, the state and government, it was controlled by Democrats. So you really didn't get the opportunity to see his work with his name on it unless you're in tune with politics. If you're not in tune with politics, you just think our local council, city council people did the opportunity zones and all this other stuff, you know? So it's just stuff like that. But I wish he would have went harder with that platinum plan way before. And I think it would be a different result right now, especially among Black people.
Yeah, I think.
Can I add to that?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and add to it, and then I'll get to Ross. Yeah.
Okay. I completely agree with what Corey was sharing here, and in terms of the optics. And because a lot of us were kind of behind the scene, we knew some things were going on. I was made privy to what would have been considered Trump's Black agenda a few months prior. And brother, I think I shared that with you in an email. But I understand completely. It was the optics. Like, this thing dropped just a few weeks before the election. And, you know, Sonny and I were pounding the pavement on Twitter. Like, we need to hear more about this. Like, Trump, okay, you're at the debates, drop it. You know, like they're calling you racist. Be like, okay, I got a whole plan, you know? So I think I can appreciate what Black Democrat voters are saying in terms of their critique as it relates to the optics. And I think it's important for Black conservatives who do have access, if you will, to listen to that perspective and to move forward and pivot accordingly.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So what about you, Ross? Well, what part of the panel really stuck out to you the most?
So I agree that the I'm sorry, is it Tamika or I can't remember. Tamika Michelle, the Carlton. Hey, you know what? I'm sorry. All right, I'm trying here. Okay. No, you know, the Carlton reference I thought was a great reference because, you know, while it's generalized, it's an overgeneralized analogy. It does point out that there are differences, right? So, of course, she wasn't trying to say that these are the only two caricatures that you can be and be a Black conservative. But what she was trying to say is, look, you can be Black and you can be on this side and you can be on this side and anywhere along the spectrum in the middle. There's all these different versions. And that's a great analogy. I liked Sonny, what she was having to say about the fact that, you know, coming out and saying that, you know, we need to be supportive of not just conservatives, but of Black conservatives. And, you know, I've heard Sonny and I've heard Felecia say this a lot, that we want to go into Atlanta, we want to go into Detroit, we want to go into New York City, and we want to convince Black people there that we care about them and that we actually want our policies to work for them, yet we won't run candidates in those races. And if you're not going to run a candidate there, then you're telling them, we don't care about you. because I'm not even willing to spend the time to put a candidate up in this district. Yeah, we might lose, and we'll probably lose for years and years and years. But the thing about making investments on the business side is you don't expect a return the first day. You expect to make an investment and then to have it pay off sometime in the future. And you hope to reap greater rewards than what you put into it. But it takes initial investments. It takes spending that money and that time and that effort to get there. And, I hate this word pandering, because I think if there's one thing Democrats do a better job in the black community than Republicans do, and it's not I think, I know that this is what they do better than us, is they message. They get their message to those people by explaining those messages in terms that are acceptable to that crowd. The Democrats do that, and every time they do it, white conservatives go, "Oh, look at these pandering guys. They should see through this. It's racism and blah, blah, blah." No, it's marketing, right? If I have a Nike commercial that's aimed towards white runners and towards black basketball players and football players and everything else, I'm going to message those messages differently. I'm going to package those commercials in a way that fits those athletes or those specific people. I'm not going to advertise it the same way. And the reason for that is they're not going to receive the message the same way. I have to be able to take my message and be able to adapt it. That doesn't mean change the core. That doesn't mean change the underlying policies. It means taking the message of what we want to do and making it to where everybody can understand it in terms that fit them. And I thought when she made that Carlton reference, that was alluding towards that. Look, we have to go and talk to these people on their terms. We cannot sit here and say it's this or that. And because I'm watching your comments, and they're blowing up a little bit over this one thing. So Candace Owens does not do a good job of doing that. She packages her message for one specific group of people. Oh, y'all wanted us to say her name. There's her name. Okay, I'm not against Candace Owens. I don't want her to fall off the face of the earth, but I would like to see her message become more coherent and become something that more people would be willing to digest. Unfortunately, it does more to turn people away that we're looking to turn away, that we're looking to bring in, than it does to bring them in. So you catch more flies with sugar than you do with honey. And I guarantee you want to see people, immediately ignore you, call them stupid, call them idiots, call them barbarians to start with, right? Hillary said that all conservatives were deplorables, and all of a sudden she was out the window. But yet we go and call people thugs and racists and Neanderthals and whatever else, and that's supposed to be acceptable?
Right. Yeah. And that's a really good point. I mean, the idea is that you have to be able to talk to different types of black people. So I thought that the Carlton analogy was apt. So what did you think of the whole Carlton thing, Corey?
I thought it was spot on. I mean, for example, me coming from where I come from, former gangbanger, former drug dealer, times in prison, I can relate to the Will. He's going to come dressed like me, keep the little slang with him, but at the same time, he's going to be giving me a message that I can comprehend in the language that we speak in the hood. More so than you sliding Carlton up in here, and it's like, dude, you don't get your square ass on somewhere. That's it's going to be rejected. I mean, it's just, to be honest, it's going to be rejected based on that. And to go back to what I said earlier, everything is about optics. It's like how you put it out there. I mean, I got dreads, but if I didn't explain that I had a paralegal degree, nobody would know unless I was in that field. But it's all about optics. And I thought that was a great analogy, because especially coming with the conservative message. Don't just run everybody thinking that, all black people are the same. No, you have to give us people that can interpret conservatism and bring it to us over here on the east side of Atlanta. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to push back just slightly, because I agree with you. But here's the thing. I'm more of the Carlton type. You're more of the Will type. You and I get along fine. I mean, we talk, we agree on some things, we disagree on others. So does that mean that, do you think that there is room for a Carlton type to be able to talk to at least some people who are more like you?
Yes, after you've built a rapport. I'm just going to, Ross, I don't like Candace Owens whatsoever. I don't. I've listened to her multiple times. Nothing she says resonates. So, if you just throw me somebody like that, no. But if, like, for example, You always make sense, Jeff. I'm just gonna put it like that. You always make sense. It don't make a difference what you're talking about. You make sense, right? Even if I don't agree with it, it's still a conversation that we can have, not a debate. And so I think that that's what brings us together. We can have a conversation more so than debate on ideas. And I think that, yeah, from that perspective, it can happen once you build a rapport and start to talk to folks.
Yeah, so that's a good key point. I mean, in a lot of the Black conservative Inc. types, it doesn't seem like they do build that rapport or show that level of respect. And for the record, I'm not the one who brought up Candace first, so I'm just going to put that out there. But still, when I say Black conservative Inc., I mean, you don't really see them doing that. And I'm not saying this about all of them, because there are a few people who I might classify as Black conservative Incs. who are actually willing to talk to Black people, but for the most part, they don't. So you can't really expect them to have that level of influence. You can't expect a Blexit or a Black exodus over to the right if you're not talking to the people that you're trying to get over there. It's like Moses trying to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt, but he doesn't talk to any of them. It doesn't make any sense.
But then at the same time, too, real quick, if I may, just with that, it has to be a why should we leave? Like my father always told me, he said, you never quit a job until you have another one lined up. And so, just leaving the Democratic Party and then switching to the Republican Party, and there is no real results or tangibles that we can see immediately. Why just jump ship like that? You just want to make sure that we can get something fair. And then if that opens up, then we will. I mean, I guarantee that Black people will, but it's who they put out there. I mean, for example, I remember when I first started reading, watching politics some years back, it was Paris Denard who I was looking at. I'm like, seriously? Like, no, I can't relate to dude. But then when you, what's the brother name that was head of the RNC when Obama won?
Michael Steele.
I end up liking Michael Steele. Those are the differences, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So that's just the point I wanted to make.
No, that makes sense. I like that analogy. Like, you don't leave your job until you have another one lined up. That is the perfect analogy for this. So I'm glad you brought that up. I might have to steal that, but I'll give you credit. So Sister Felecia, what do you think about the whole Carlton thing? I mean, I know there was a controversy over that, but I mean, how did you view those comments?
Well, obviously, anytime you can create all kinds of conversations, it's good news to me. So I'll say that. One of the tweets I put out there was that Blexiteers are not Carltons at all. And Carlton, here's why. If you know anything about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I watched that show religiously, Carlton loved Black people. I mean, you could not tell Carlton he was not Black. Something would pop off in Carlton if you made that mistake. And I remember him checking Will one time, or Will's friends. It was at
Will's friend,
that scene. So he was very much so cognizant of Black history. He was cognizant of where he was. I mean, he loved being Black. Well, juxtapose that with Blexiteers who told us, don't call us Black, call us American. So we weren't even talking about them. Shamika wasn't even referencing them whatsoever. And so that's what I wanted to put out in the atmosphere on Twitter. We're making a clear distinction and saying that diverse thinking, diverse thought needs to be welcomed here. And you can't have just one type of Black conservative. You can't have someone who's just the uppity person and then think that, somebody like Corey or Maj or any others aren't conservative because they don't look the part. That's not how we function over here. And that's one of the reasons why so many people are attracted to the conscious conservative movement, because we're all united based on the values, but we all bring our unique experiences here. And we're showing how the values inject themselves in our everyday lives. And so as more conservatives, and I'm talking about white beloveds, as more of them see this diverse thinking, I hope that they become more comfortable talking to Black people. And as Sunny talks about creating fellowship, that's what we have to do. So, don't dismiss somebody just because they aren't the Carlton. Don't dismiss some individuals because they might put on the Will Smith type of conservatism. We don't get to judge that whatsoever. Just like we don't get to judge and say somebody isn't saved because they dress this way or their hair is this color. Well, we don't have any right to do all that. But I wanted to put that out there, that we are making it very clear. Carlton is not Blexiteers and vice versa.
So I'm glad you brought that up. And that as far as white conservatives go, that leads me into my next question. But before I do that, I want to read the quote from Carlton, because when people started freaking out over this Carlton thing, I put Carlton was pro-black. Mm-hmm. And so here's the quote you're talking about when Will's friend was jamming him up about trying to join the fraternity or whatever he was trying to do. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I watched it, so I can't remember, but I vaguely remember it. But here's what Carlton said in response. Being black isn't what I'm trying to be. It's what I am. Mm-hmm. I'm running the same race and jumping the same hurdles you are. So why are you tripping me up? You said we need to stick together, but you don't even know what that means. If you ask me, you're the real sellout. So Carlton loved being black. Carlton was pro-black. He had no problem owning his blackness. He didn't say, "Don't call me black, I'm American." He's a black American, and he was proud to be such. And I even remember that episode. I mean, especially when the riots happened. You know, them coming out, the LA riots, them coming out to help clean up that kind of stuff. He was with them. He wasn't staying far away. Mm-hmm. He didn't care about the fact that he may talk proper like I do, or like a lot of us do. He just said, you know what? These are my people. I need to help out. So let's brought that up. But as far as white conservatives go, I'll tell you what I think to this question, because I was actually there at the event when they spoke. But how do you think that white conservatives took that panel from what you've seen on social media and elsewhere? I'll start with you, Felecia.
From what I watched, from the replay, I mean, it was like they were at church. And not just any kind of church. They were at a black church. Okay. All right. The screaming, the hollering, the good claps and stuff. And I was very encouraged by that. That tells me that beloved conservatives are ready. And I just love it.
Awesome. What about you, Corey? I don't know if you how much of it you saw, or if you were able to see the audience, but how do you think that white conservatives responded?
I think they were receptive to it. I mean, for me, I watched the whole thing, and it was, to me, I would say the polar opposite of Felecia. It was like a basketball sporting event, right? Anytime you're rooting for the home team, of course you'll get the applauses and stuff like that. But I think that going forward, I think it can trickle down to where it can be a movement. Yes. with that panel, with the message that came from that panel among white conservatives. But at the same time, I would say it can't get drowned out, by the Tommy Lawrence and those kind of people that you see on television. So,
yeah.
Well, the squeaky wheel always gets the grease, right? I mean, the people who make the most noise are going to get the most attention. And, it's sad. It is, because there's people like me who, I like to say conservatism to me is living the golden rule. Right, that I have my rights and I want to live by my way of life and I want to choose for myself. So I have to allow other people to do the same. That's what conservatism is to me. That's what it means to me. And Maj kept asking that question, like, what does conservatism mean to you? Mm-hmm. That's what it means to me. Is like, okay, I want the right to own a gun. I want the right to make my own financial decisions. I want the right to raise my kids in the religion I choose and raise them the way I choose. So I then have to respect your right and give you that opportunity to do the same. And, what I see so much and what infuriates me is that we often see on the right where these people, they'll celebrate when white people go to the Capitol with their AR-15s. But as soon as they see a black group of people going to the Capitol with their AR-15s, it's like, there's no difference between these two groups. Yeah. They may have different political motives, and that's fine, but they're both exercising the same right. And they both have the same right to exercise. So if we can't appreciate when one group does something versus when another group does something, then that makes us look racist, right? It makes us look racist when we have a problem when it's a specific group of people that are doing something. So I talk, I work in oil and gas, and I talk to a lot of Hispanic people. I mean, that's a majority of my industry. And I would tell you that 99% of them would probably be Republicans, but there's a few issues that they see that makes them hesitant to be fully supportive of the message. And it's not that they may not vote for us, because they may actually indeed vote for us, but it just is going to push them off. And, until we can say as conservatives that freedom is freedom, regardless of skin color, race, religion, sexual orientation, then we're going to have a hard time selling that message and not being told that we're bigots or racist or anything else. Because until we can say, Corey, you and I might not agree on a lot of things, right? You may spend your money in a completely different way than I spend my money. But if I want to be free to spend my money the way I want to spend it, I have to look at you, Corey, and say, you know what? Spend your money however you feel free. If you feel that that's the best thing for you, if that's the rational decision for you, it may be completely irrational for me, but that's not important. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with the conversation. The only thing that has to do with the conversation is that you, like me, are a free person who can make his own decisions and make his own mistakes and his own rewards off of it. And until we can instill that amongst the entire party, we're going to have a really difficult time selling our message anywhere, not just in suburban and urban areas.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I know that we keep saying like we don't want to get drowned out, and I completely understand. But I want to emphasize, as I did with Twitter class a couple of days ago, we got heard by the right people. And that's all that matters. You don't need every single person here. You need the right people to hear. And we had conscious conservatives who were in the background talking to folks who have big dollars. We had folks positioned there strategically. And so to have that panel up there to project the message through the mainstream airways, that was phenomenal. And then plus to have the connections that we are making even behind the scenes. So I want to encourage beloveds that even if the panel did not go as viral as it could have, if the other faces were there, the message was heard by the right people. And I'll continue to push that out there. So expect to see some great things taking place in terms of the movement and just continuing to build upon that. I mean, folks are paying attention. And I used to tell folks all the time, I know they're watching Twitter class. I know they're listening to Sonny's Corner. I know it. And so for that reason, we have a very good cause to be happy at this particular moment, because I know I'm happy. So.
Yeah, we definitely have cause to be optimistic. And I'll tell you right now, as somebody who was at the event, a lot of white conservatives are ready. And I'll tell you why I'm delineating between white and black right now and in just a second. But I will tell you, like, they loved that panel. It was like church. It was like a sporting event. I saw how they reacted even before the panel. I mean, even when I showed up wearing a Black Guns Matter t-shirt and they're saying like, oh, we love Maj Toure. Where is Maj here? Where's Maj at? We love Maj. Old, middle-aged, young, white men and women were all about black. Even the ones that didn't know what Black Guns Matter was. I was wearing that shirt and they were like, I love that. That's great. What's that about? And it gave me the opportunity to tell them about Maj's organization and to let them know to watch that panel on Sunday. So even before the panel, they were ready for it. But as Julian in the chat can attest, they were ready for this. That they want this. I'm going to put his little thing up here. He said, I can tell you only the party bosses are like the ones that we're talking about before. I got tons of support at CPAC without changing anything about myself or modifying my delivery. And y'all know how Julian is, right? I even got militant black and they cheered. Julian tells it straight. He tells it like it is. So, I mean, he's a strong black man, and he will tell them how he feels about certain things, good, bad, and ugly. And they were with it. So to me, I left CPAC feeling very optimistic about a lot of things, but mostly about, how it is with the black conservatism. And the reason why I brought up white conservatives specifically is because, let's face it, the conservative movement is made up like 90% white conservatives. So if we are going to turn the GOP and the conservative movement into a product that black people are willing to buy, or as Sonny said, that they're willing to fight for, then we need the help of white conservatives who want to help and who get it. So that kind of transitions into the next thing I wanted to talk about. I mean, because we always talk about what the conservative movement is doing wrong, and rightly so. We talk about the problematic elements as far as messaging goes. I want to pivot to talk about solutions and the future of black conservatism, what we need to do to really affect positive change. So here's the first thing I want to talk about. In order, like we talk about the bad messaging. So in order to get conservatives to abandon that messaging and to transition to something else, we have to provide an alternative ideas, a better way to message. So what do you think? And I'm going to start with you, Corey. As far as being a Black man who votes Democrat, what should the overall messaging strategy look like? And this is specifically about, conservative media, pundits, commentators like myself, politicians, conservative leaders. What should their messaging strategy look like as opposed to what it is right now?
I would say, for one, I would have to first go back to the party, because I'm on the outside looking in. So I'm going to just give you that perspective. Okay. The party in itself needs to reflect a little bit more of me. Right now, I think we have just Tim Scott that's in the Senate, and how many in the House that's Black?
Just like a couple, I think.
Yeah, compared to the Democratic Party. Right, Democratic Party would be that umbrella where everybody's invited. You can come over here, and it looks like America. So I think that's number one, right? The messaging, I would say, when it comes to the messaging, what the Republican Party wants to do for Black people overall, I think it's good, especially when you're dealing with economics, when you're dealing with home ownership, when you're thinking about gun rights, limited government. Who, as a Black person, can't get behind that? I mean, especially limited government, they've been kicking our ass for a long time. So why would we want this to get shrinked and out the way? And also, who does not want to raise themselves out of poverty? We want those opportunities. So those messagings are correct and need to be in the forefront. The part that I think gets caught up in that, especially with Democratic voters, is like, for example, what's going on in Georgia right now with the restricted voting access and stuff like that. Like, leave that alone. Leave it alone. I understand that, it's tactics and maneuvers, but that means something to Black people based on civil rights. That's what Black people take it to when it comes to the Voting Rights Act. So every time you turn around, you're tinkering with that. It's not going to go over well. Just let it be. And so I think that highlight the strong principles that we all can agree on that I just mentioned, and stop messing with that other stuff. And you'll be surprised how many people like myself be willing to look at it. Take a check. Okay, let me just, this election cycle, because the Democrats have been playing us. Let me just look over here and see what's going on, and it'd be more receptive.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, that's the number one issue I'm hearing about, especially over the past few days, the issues with voting going on in Georgia. I haven't really weighed in on it yet because I haven't done enough research to where I feel like I could speak on it intelligently. From the little bit I have seen, I think some of it is overblown, but I also think that there's some valid points there. And so I want to look more into that, because when I do, I want to be able to highlight the areas where the Republican Party is messing up. Because you're right, if they are messing with certain things that shouldn't be messed with, and that's getting in the way of us winning over more Black support, then it's a mistake to continue with it. And I think that there is a mindset on the right. I don't know how prevalent it is. But it's like, they would rather decrease the votes rather than just winning more hearts and minds. It's a lazy way to go about it. But if there is an issue there, I still think that there is a way to affect change in that regard. But what do you think, Felecia, as far as the overall messaging goes? What would be a better way to do it?
Certainly. I love how Sunny talks about fellowship a lot, and she encourages beloved conservatives to begin fellowshipping with people and having those conversations. And I'll add to this, I think that it's important for folks to become acquainted with authentic American history and the history of those who are Black in this country. So can I do a shameless plug? Can I plug in my book?
That's right, sis.
The 1520 Rise gives conservatives different strategies for evangelizing the message in Black communities. And it's a very easy read. I talk about history. I talk about a literal formula for evangelizing it. And it includes like knowing who your audience is and not offending them with the vilest, racist commentary. It goes back to that fellowship and relating to one another based upon the core values. And so what I don't want to see happening is for us to frame new talking points for beloved conservative. I do not want that to happen, because It takes away from them being authentic. It takes away from them just having an opportunity to get to know one another. So that's why I wrote this book in this perspective, like study history, know individuals, know the spirit, know the values, and then just go from there. And as Ross was talking about how his experience with the military just kind of opened his eyes about different individuals, that's fellowship. When you kind of immerse yourself in different cultures, whether it's just running into the store or just going to someone's church, whatever it might be, just get into the habit of fellowshipping with one another. And we tried to do that a lot with Twitter class. We tried to bring beloved conservatives and Black voters to the class to have these tough conversations around topics that are controversial and can get very heated. And over the last couple of years, we've done that very successfully. So it can be done. And I tried my hardest to prove it to beloveds that, you know, Black people are not going to dismiss you because you're white and conservative. Okay. So get that talking point out of here. And beloved conservatives, Black folks are not going to reject you. You know, it goes back to that fellowship. So I strongly encourage beloveds not to ask for new talking points. Don't do that. Don't ask us to tell you what to say. You have a mind of your own. Use your mind. Don't be a dimwit. Okay. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Is this the part of the show that I should point out that Felecia once had me blocked on Twitter for a while?
Yeah, but
good segue.
Blocked, so I mean, you know, but
I mean, I just wanted to put that out there. I like the message, but I was on the block side of things for a while here. All right.
But I wanted to hone in on something you said, Felicia, because we were talking about this earlier today. The word fellowship. I mean, I've kind of been chewing on that, and I've heard Sonny say it. I've heard you say it. And fellowship, that is a very Christian term, right? That is something that's used in the church a lot, which is yet another area of commonality that conservatives have with the Black community. We are very serious about our faith. You don't get that so much on the progressive Democratic side, unless you're talking to Black folks or even Latinos as well. So when we're talking about fellowship, especially in the Christian sense, there's no room for a plantation message. You don't look at your fellow brother or sister and look at them like a slave, unless they're literally in bondage and slavery. You look at them as somebody who thinks through their decisions and has valid reasons for voting the way they do. So with you, Ross, how do you think, you know, and this goes for white and Black conservatives, but how do you think that we need to change the overall messaging just from the conservative cultural messaging towards the Black community?
Well, I think it starts with understanding that the message is going to be different, right? I think white conservatives have to understand that there's marketing to be done. There's trust to rebuild. We're not just going to walk into these communities and tell them we're better for you and them say, yeah, you're right. You know, it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take that investment, right? You know, I go back. So, you know, Jeff, you know, my history, my background is in economics and business. So, you know, I come at this looking at it like a business ordeal and saying, if you want to make money, you have to invest, and you can't start small. You have to, if you're going to jump in, you jump in with both feet, right? You don't start a business by putting $10 into it. You start a business by putting $10,000 into it. You start by going in full-fledged and really pouring yourself into it and giving it your all. And until white conservatives recognize that, hey, if we want to make gains in this community, which you should, there's no justifiable reason that white conservatives should be saying, no, we're good, right? We don't need to pick up that demographic, because you most certainly do, right? And in Texas, we saw large gains amongst the Latino demographic by appealing to morality, appealing to the anti-abortion stance, appealing to the freedom of religion stance, appealing to the hard-working stance. And those messages resonate across demographics, right? 99% of people, again, are hardworking people who want to live their lives and be free and be left alone, right? They don't want somebody telling them what they can and can't do. They don't want to have to pay higher taxes, right? I've never heard anybody but white liberal women say, I'd be happy to pay more in taxes. right? So don't get me wrong, they're out there and they say it all. Well, I'd be happy to pay another $1,000 a year in taxes. Well, that's $1,000 for you. For me, that's about $30,000. So there's a difference in perspective here. Okay. I've got a little more skin in that game. But the point is that, we have to understand that to take those messages there, we have to be willing to accept that those messages exist. We have to be willing to accept that the messages are not going to be the same. And we can't sit here and fight we're not going to pander game. Again, it's not pandering, it's marketing. Right? Any business is going to change their message based on where, right? Sprite has LeBron James as a spokesperson, but they also have Hispanic spokespeople. They also have white spokespeople, right? They have different spokespeople to talk to different crowds. It's not that there's not white people who are going to see LeBron James and say, oh, I like LeBron James. There's crossover in those demographics, but those advertising campaigns are meant to specifically target those demographics that like basketball, that like, black men, whatever. And we have to understand that. And until white conservatives can accept that there's a world outside of our little knit, what we want it to be world, we're not really going to make gains. The flip side of that is we also then have to recognize that, as I told Corey, rationality is irrational. Right? Rationality is an individual thing, talking about an economic side of things, right? So in economics, we have two rules. Number one, a rational person will always do what's in their own best self-interest. Number two, a rational person is irrational. And what that means is that people are going to make choices that don't make sense to us. And they're going to value things differently than we value them. And that's just so. We can't make them change their own individual value perceptions because that's an individual choice. But if we can make them see the value in what we're offering, which is to allow them to choose for themselves and have more diktat over their own lives and their own value offerings, then we can start to change the core of that message to them away from, hey, we're the party that wants to go to war. We're the party that wants to take away your benefits, to we're the party that wants to let you control your life. We're the party that wants to reduce your taxes and help you start a business and let you succeed and let you make it. But on the flip side of letting you make it, that also means that there's the possibility you're going to fail. And we need people to see both aspects of that and say there is good in being free.
Right. Gotcha. That makes sense. And I'm glad you put it that way, because that actually ties into the next question that I'm going to ask. So we just talked about the messaging strategy for the overall conservative movement towards the Black community. But now we need to talk about how politicians and candidates, people running for office, how should their messages look directly to the Black community? And Corey, you brought this up earlier. You said, when I asked that first question, first and foremost, you said you needed to have more people who look like you in the Republican Party. But part of making that happen is getting them elected. So when you're talking about politicians running in predominantly Black areas, whether these are white candidates, Black candidates, or what have you, what do they need to tell you? What do they need to demonstrate to you that would make you want to pull that lever for them?
Specifically talk to the issues of the Black community. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm not going to say the name, but it was a particular candidate that was running in my district, okay, last year. I mean, lost by a landslide. Not because the person who she ran against was better. It was what she was selling to the community, right? I mean, we want cleaned up parks. We want, job opportunity. These are the things that we want to see in the community. We want community centers, after school programs, reduce crime. This is the message that candidates need to be talking to us specifically, instead of trying to sell us a particular individual or the party in itself. Don't give us that. Give us your ideas. Give us you as the candidate, what you're going to do for us, and not the other way around. I think, and that's another thing that I have a real big issue with, and this is on both sides, right? I've never once seen a candidate, whether Democratic or Republican, come into the Black community and ask the Black community, what do they want? It's always the other way around. What I'm going to do for you. It's like, whoa, you don't even know everything that what we're on over here. But I think that's another point, especially I think the conservatives can really win with this. If they flip that message, get into the community, put those boots on the ground, talk to the people and ask them, what can they do for us instead of being the other way around, them telling us what they're going to do. And I think that it'd be a winning strategy if they went that route.
Well, Corey, if it makes you feel any better, I'll tell you a quick anecdote about. So I ran for Congress last term. I didn't win, of course, obviously, but
running again though.
Yeah,
was that I'm up again? I'm coming up again for a different office, but I'm going to go again. But the point is that I went to an event, and I literally heard about 5 different candidates. I counted the one candidate. He said in a 2.5 minute long talk, he said the word Trump 28 times. Wow. And when I got up to talk next, I said, did anybody hear him say what his ideas were? Because all he said was he was going to support Trump. And this is, don't get me wrong, Trump did some good things, but he also did some things I didn't like. But he's not the president anymore. And eventually, even if he won re-election, he wasn't going to be the president anymore. If you're getting elected to Congress or you're getting elected to city council, it's not about, do you support the person above you? I don't care if you support the person above you. I want to know what you're doing. And this, trust me, this is not just amongst your community. It's something that's happening in all communities. And we've gotten to the point where we accept so little from our elected officials, that we accept such a low bar of what it means to be an elected official, that it really is, it's really just a placeholder position anymore. It's just a title at this point.
So then I'm going to ask you the question too, because you actually just said what I was going to say. A lot of candidates glommed onto Trump to sell themselves without really talking about their ideas. It happened in Corey's district, but I can tell you it happened all across the country. Black and white people running for Congress saying, vote for me because I like Trump. That is the dumbest sales pitch I've ever heard. Literally, my background is in sales. That's how I look at this thing. That is the dumbest sales pitch I've ever heard. Did I say the dumbest? Yeah, the dumbest. So like, let's say if you, Ross, if you were going to be running in a predominantly Black district, how would you approach it? I mean, as somebody who's run for office, what do you think that Republican candidates need to do?
So it's an interesting question, because I actually am in the process of getting ready for a campaign, and I wanted to do something special for my campaign announcement. I wanted to really hit the gate running, right? So I decided this year to get the enthusiasm up right away, right? To really drive in that we are excited to campaign and we're getting out here. We're going to hold a concert. And I was looking at dates and looking at venues and finally scheduled one. And I've got 2 Black conservative rappers, one who is Topher, who, by the way, is #1 on iTunes right now. Go buy his album. It just came out yesterday. Yeah, shameless plug. So if Felecia can do it, I can do it. But, the point is that I have him coming out here to do a concert. And then I looked at the date and I texted Jeff and I said, I'm either going to be looked at as the most racist guy ever or the least racist guy ever. More likely, I'm going to be both simultaneously, because we're holding a rap concert as the white guy's campaign announcement on Juneteenth.
Oh, yeah, that's what we talk.
But here's what we're going to do. We're not going to hide from it. We're not going to run away from it. We're not going to try to ignore it. We're going to embrace it heads on. We're going to acknowledge what that day is and what that day means. And that day holds significance in Texas, in the South, because it is a day to be celebrated. And you know what? That it is something that people should be proud of. That Juneteenth is a day when people became free in this state and in other states around us, and that message is something that we shouldn't run away from. And, I think for a lot of white people, they get worried that they're going to be perceived as racist, or they're going to be perceived as X, Y, or Z, or a bigot or whatever. And you know what? You're not going to win 99% of the time, right? There's people who are going to hate you one way or the other, and they're going to hate you regardless. Look at Ted Cruz, right? He goes to Cancun, people hate him. He comes back, people hate him. He does this, people hate him. He's going to get it, right? The people who hate him are going to hate him. They don't need a reason. They're just looking for an excuse. So I'm going to tell you right now that as a white guy that's going to hold a rap concert on June 19th in Texas to celebrate my campaign announcement, we're not going to run away from that fact. We're going to go heads on into it. We're going to embrace it. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to take it, and we're going to make it part of our campaign. We're going to make it something that is essential to our message, which is that, you know what? We're not shy about this. We're not going to be scared to celebrate a predominantly African-American Black holiday, because even though it's a holiday predominantly celebrated by Blacks in Texas, it is a Texas day. It is a Texas holiday, and it's something that is to be celebrated. June 19th, 1865, Article 3 was written, not the Emancipation Proclamation. A lot of people get this wrong. It's General Order Number 3. That was written at the time by the Texas General that freed all the slaves in Texas and made them free people and abolished the right to slavery. So that is something to not just say, you know what, it never happened, or, oh, you know what, that was in the past, or this was, The problem I see today too often is we want to erase the bad parts of history and not say, you know what, there's lessons to be learned here, right? Hitler did bad things. We don't write him out of the history books. We leave him in there so we can learn the lessons from that history of what happens when we give a central power too much authority, when we give them too much control over our lives. That's the same thing we should be saying about slavery, that we gave at one point in time in this country, we gave people too much power over other people's lives. And now what we should do is we should ensure that that type of power can never be exerted again, that the majority can never give themselves that type of power again. And that, I think, is more to the conservative ideal of that we are going to prevent this centralization of power that allows the majority to take back powers or rights away from us. Whether, and again, that could be any demographic. This could be religion. This could be race. This could be sexual orientation. This could be gender. It could be whatever you want it to be. But Republicans, white conservatives especially, have to embrace that there is this other side. And we can't shy away from it. We can't be scared of it. We can't say that it didn't happen or doesn't exist, and we can't praise the false idols, right? The generals who were Confederate generals, we need to remember who they were for what they did. We can acknowledge that they're flawed humans. We can acknowledge that maybe there was something good they did at some point in time. But overall in history, we need to learn the lessons of what the Confederacy was and why it was bad and why that war was a good and just war that led to a better outcome. And if we start erasing that history, we're doing a disservice to our country because we're erasing the lessons that were learned by those events.
Yep, that's true. That's true. And I don't think you should shy away from the history of that. And if I remember correctly, when you texted me, you didn't even realize it was Juneteenth until after you had already did the date, right?
Yeah. So I was sitting there, I was booking tickets, and I was like, June 19th. Oh shit, June 19th. Oh God. Oh. And then I was like, well. All right. Okay. Well, that's what it is. Because and it's not a history. It's not a day that white conservatives or white Texans probably really know that much about. Like I know the history of it now. I know the history of it, but it's not a day that I hear the date. I hear Juneteenth. I know what Juneteenth is, but I don't associate June 19th to Juneteenth.
Right.
But of course, once I saw the date and thought about it for a second, I went, oh, yeah, okay. She's going to block me again.
Okay. So before Felecia blocks you, I'm going to ask her. So when it comes to our candidates that were running in minority areas, Black areas, well, what do you think their messaging should be to the Black community when they're running so that we can get them elected?
I would suggest, first of all, these candidates need to make connections with the organizations that are already working inside Black communities. So let's say somebody is running for office and they are connected to Shakim. I mean, that's perfect because he has such a connection to the community already. So he can give them the concerns. He can talk to them. He can help frame the new talking points for that particular candidate. It's about getting more so community invested as opposed to these individuals who come out of nowhere, drop into Black communities and say, hey, vote for me because I have a better conservative message. It's about having those connections connections, those relationships. So if I was to advise any candidate, I would tell you, go and find those organizations that are already present on the ground. Make connections with those folks and tell them, I am here to represent and to protect what you have going on right now. I think that's crucial. I think it's destructive when candidates come in and act as if they're going to save the day. Black communities are already saving themselves. We are already building. We are already, we have families that are growing. We have a shift that's taking place even within the culture in terms of embracing marriage and all these other things. The shift is already taking place. So we're building, but we have these government forces or policies that are trying to choke what we are trying to build. For example, in California, everybody knows about the destructive AB5 bill, right? Everybody knows about it. That thing crushed and killed this Black single mother's freelance business, where I had to leave the state just so I can make money. So when I'm talking about us not looking to government to solve the problem, we're looking for candidates who are going to say, I wish you would put something on these folks' neck. I will raise hell. That's the kind of candidates that we need. Someone who is going to say, I'm going to prevent progressive politics from choking your economics so that you can be free to do as you desire. So that would be my suggestion. Go in there, make connections with the organizations that are already present, and then vow to fight to the end on their behalf.
Awesome. So all of that was great. What everybody just said was great. And that's going to lead me to really the final couple questions here, because so to recap, we've talked about the flaws in the messaging strategy that the conservative movement has been using for decades. We've talked about those flaws. We've talked about the issues. We've talked about the different types of Black conservatives who exist. And we've also talked about messaging strategy, that the messaging strategy that should be used, whether it's on the punditry level, commentators, conservative media, or politicians themselves. So here's the next question. In light of what we said, which I know that we're going to have to talk about this in other iterations as well, but how do we convince the Republican Party and the conservative movement to pivot and implement more of our strategies? Because we've already seen that the ones that they've been using have been abysmal failures. So how do we, what do we need to do to persuade enough conservatives, and what Felecia said, the right people, to try our strategies out?
I want to go first.
Go ahead. Ladies first.
Number one, they need to keep getting their butts beat. They're not going to feel it any other way unless they keep catching these L's. So you know what? Take the L's. That's the only way it's going to happen. And if you really think about it, with Trump losing, conservatives are just kind of like, how in the world did that happen? What went wrong? So they're in that place of what went wrong. And they have to consider, as Sunny says, situational awareness, being aware of the situation. Well, they got beat big time. And they can say all they want, the voter fraud, yada, yada, whatever. Trump had the opportunity to get an easy 20% of Black voters, but because he allows certain folks to infiltrate, they screwed it all up. So conservatives need to keep getting beat. How about that? You just keep losing at the local, at the state, at the federal level. And until you can learn your lesson, well, keep investing millions into defeat and then watch everybody else kind of grow. So that's the strategy here.
So how many
sounds
L's
like my grandma right now.
How long do we need to take L's before we learn?
They need to take L's until they're finally like, I'm tired of getting beat. I'm tired of being called racist. I'm tired of progressivism. I'm tired. There has got to be a better way. And guess what? The choice is already here.
So
So
let me
Felecia
ask-
sounds like my grandma right now, just telling you, you're either going to get beat or you're going to learn. One of the two. Take your beating or get. So I'm a white kid who grew up in rural America, man. I know what it's like to go get a switch. Okay, you're looking at that thing going, okay, if I come back with that, she's going to send me right back out here. If I come back with that, she's going to break me in half. There's a fine line there.
So let me ask you this then, Felecia. Do you think that we are close to having enough L's to where we're finally realizing, okay, we need to try something new?
Yes, because Trump was our best bet. And here's why. Trump was a bulldog. Nobody liked Trump, and then everybody liked Trump. Do you get what I'm trying to say here? So he was the bulldog. He was the one who could go toe to toe with the Democrats and with Republicans that he didn't like. Well, who else is going to do that? Who else do we have in our party currently who can go toe to toe? Nobody. So if Trump, even with his increase in vote, I mean, the man got what, 75 million American votes? That's historic. Okay. So even with that happening and he still lost, he wouldn't have lost if he got that 20% of the black vote. So since conservatives can't see that, or they did not see it over the last 4 years, they feel it today. I'm here for this.
So what about you, Corey? Again, being as somebody who's on the outside, but you're on the outside, but you see us talk. You see what we're saying. What do you think we need to do to persuade the rest of the conservative movement to try a new strategy?
I think that the best strategy for the conservatives is to get rid of all the ones that's currently in position right now. The Mitch McConnells. I think that all those folks need to go so that the party can actually be cleaned up, because those individuals only care about power. They don't really care about nothing else. They care about strictly about power. So until the Republican Party remove those elements that only concerned about power, then, right now, like Felecia said, it's going to be a bunch of L's. And I'll just add to Felecia, like me and my boy Solomon, shout out to Solomon on our,
Solomon G. Yes.
We saw Georgia turning blue. We predicted that Georgia would go blue on our podcast way before the election, right? Because we saw that Stacey Abrams barely lost. People don't realize that she barely lost the governorship. And so we saw the change in the dynamics of the state, and we called it, it's going to turn blue. And like I said, it's just those things, the changing of the guards need to change the Republican Party. That those people need to go. Don't get it twisted. I think all Democrats, all of them need to go in Washington. Like, to be honest with you, a lot of times I vote and I'm anti-incumbent. Like, I will vote against who's ever the incumbent. I don't care. But I think that needs to happen. And I think that once that happens, once that party looks more acceptable to black people by getting rid of a lot of those old guards, then I think a lot of black people will come over.
Yeah, that is a really good point, especially coming from somebody who votes Democrat, because I can tell you right now, 90% of Republicans who are going to hear what you said are going to agree with you, because they can't stand McConnell either. They can't stand the Romneys either. They can't stand the establishment. So that they would have a lot of agreement with you on that. But it is interesting to see somebody like yourself also notice that as well, because you're right. It has a destructive influence. And I think that might be coming up. But we'll get into predictions in a second. What about you, Ross?
So, yeah, Corey, you're dead on, man. So I don't call it Democrats, Republicans. I call it corporate cronyist, right? We have a few people on the far left that are not corporate cronyist, and we have a few people on the farther side of the right, the more libertarian side of the right, that are not corporate cronyist. But Republicans talk about spending when a Democrat's in power, and Democrats talk about spending when a Republican's in power, right? But they all spend, right? The budget hasn't gotten fixed in the last 30 years. They both do the same things. They just do it for the policies they like and the ones that they want to push. So unless Republicans can become the party of fiscal conservatism, the left is just simply going to keep pointing out that, they're doing favors for the companies. But the left is doing the same thing. Let's be fair, right? So it's about changing that message. It's about getting new blood in there. I'm not a person who actually supports term limits. I don't, because I do think it's a detractor to getting good talent into those positions. We do want talent in those positions. But at the same time, We need to see more people be willing to run at the local level. And I think what Felecia said has a lot to do with what I'm now going to do, which is going and running in a local office and really trying to flip the bottom of the pyramid, right? When you start talking about the presidency, that's the top of the pyramid. But the top of the pyramid we saw in this last election is controlled by the bottom of the pyramid. If you control the base, you control the top. And if you can't control the base, which Democrats have done a great job of taking over the base, over these local offices. People want to talk about elections and election security. All of that is handled by county clerks, by city clerks, by local politicians. And if you're not willing to go run in those races again, then you're not willing to actually do anything about it. The federal government can pass whatever law you want. It doesn't matter, right? There's laws on the book. People don't obey them all the damn time. That's not going to change a damn thing. What changes is putting people in these positions that are actually going to make those changes at the local level and actually make sure that this is taken care of. We control the bottom of the base. We can control the top of the base. And this is, it's important that Republicans take the L, as Felecia said, and learn from it and actually start applying the lessons. So too many people are just scapegoating election security or yada yada blah blah blah.
Yep.
Honestly, okay. There's election fraud. It happened. We know it happened, but did it happen in a large enough swath that the results would have changed? Probably not. What happened was they mobilized better than we did. And we mobilized really well. But we can mobilize, and that's the best we're probably ever going to mobilize, is the honest truth. So now it's about taking some of their demographic and switching it over to our side. And it's going to be about going into those communities, not just the Black community, the LGBTQ community, the Hispanic community, even some rural Americans who have gotten accustomed to a way of life that's dependent on welfare. And, we have got to start making, some actual inroads and start talking and preaching freedom. And until we can equate economic freedom back to political freedom, people are not going to start making that juxtaposition and actually start trying to look at that value proposition and determine for themselves and want better for themselves and want to choose. I hear way too many people today who want free healthcare and free college and free yada yada. None of this is free, right? If you look at Norway and you do the tax equations, you do the math, they pay more in income. They pay more of their income to healthcare and college than we do, but it's free, so they like it, right? Well, they're happy. Yeah, ignorance is bliss, right? When you don't have to make a choice in your life and nothing's your fault, you can be carefree and happy. But a lot of the ways that people make it in this world is because they're allowed to do what they want to do and allowed to determine for themselves. And I'll give it to Alchemist. I'm on your YouTube comments over here. Alchemist is right. A lot of the issues that we're seeing, and it's not just in the Black community, because I know this is a discussion about the Black community, but I'm going to tell you, the Hispanic community feels this, the white community feels this, all the communities feel this. It's about economics and it's about policing. It's about fairness. It's about ensuring that people are treated equally across the board. Right? I can tell you as a guy who's gotten 5 speeding tickets in one day, 5 in one day, none of which I had to pay for.
You have to tell me that story later.
Yeah. My wife will tell you that story because trust me, after the first phone call, she was pissed. After the 5th phone call, I was told not to come home for a while. But the point is that we want equally applied laws. And if we want equally applied laws, we have to treat everybody the same. And we have to understand that not everybody is going to make the same choices we do. And we can't call people stupid or call them barbarians or call them plantation mentality or call the cops on them for making different choices than we do. We have to, it's not about what can Republicans do for the Black community. It's how can Republicans get out of the way of the Black community and let them build themselves? Because I guarantee you, we want to go back to free market economics. We want to not talk about socialism and not talk about communism and not talk about all these things. That means laissez-faire, free market economics.
Yep.
That means that Black people who can determine for themselves and make money for themselves need to be allowed to do so, and need to be allowed to profit and keep that money, and then take that money and reinvest it where they see fit. I get so tired of this, oh, well, they only want to shop at Black-owned businesses. That's racist. No, that's their value proposition. If you can tell me that it's fine to buy only made in America goods, but it's not okay for Black people to say, I only want to shop at a Black-owned store, if that's your choice, that's your choice. And maybe you're going to pay more for that, just as I probably pay more for made in American goods. But that's my choice. I have a value proposition that's in my head that I am using. And if I want to support my community, or I want to support my country, or I want to support my friends, and I'm willing to pay more money to do so, then that's my choice, and I should be free to make it. And for white conservatives or even some Black conservatives to say, oh, well, if you only support Black-owned businesses, you're racist. No, it's simply having a value proposition that's different than mine, and that's fine. You're allowed and welcomed to do so. And until we can get back to the true principles of laissez-faire, fiscal conservatism, we are going to be looked at as hypocrites, because the message will not resonate. We can say it all day long, but until we live it, it's not going to apply.
Awesome. Yes. So we're getting up on time here. So one last question. What are your predictions for the Black conservative movement going forward over the next 2 to 4 years? I'll start with you, Corey.
Over the 2 to 4 years, I think it's going to continue to grow, especially now that we seeing Sonny Johnson, especially Sonny. Like, I mean, that's who attracted me. That's who attracted me to all of y'all. Like, if I would have never ran into Sonny Johnson on Twitter, right? I wouldn't have been privy to meet y'all and have conversations with y'all. So therefore, I think that people like her opens it up, for other Black conservatives like yourself. And I think it's going to continue to grow based on that, especially now that hey, that's right, put her on Fox News. Hey, put her on CNN, MSNBC. I don't give a damn. Throw it up everywhere. Put her up there.
Awesome.
Matter of fact, it was not too long ago, real quick, I'll say Charlamagne on the Breakfast Club actually says something positive about Sonny. So you see she's making her rounds. Yeah. Yep.
Good. That encourages me, definitely. Yeah. What about you, Ross? Prediction.
So my prediction is that 2022 is not going to be the godsend that everybody thinks it's going to be. I think we continue to make progress, but I don't think we win. I don't think we take majority back in the House or Senate. I think we lose. And honestly, my unpopular opinion is that we should want to lose. Not because I want to see the liberals get their way, but I want to not have them have an excuse for 2024. Right? If we take the House or the Senate, then the only thing that we're going to hear in the lead up to 2024 is, well, the reason we didn't do this is because the Republicans had the House or the Republicans had the Senate and they blocked us. And then we saw this in 2010 to 2012, right? When Republicans took back the House or the Senate, when Barack Obama was president, we saw the excuses come out of the left of why they weren't doing it. So Biden is already failing on a lot of his message. Let's make him eat his words. Let's make him choke on them, right? He had these promises. He said if he got this Congress and he got this, he would be able to do it. Well, he's not doing it. That doesn't mean he won't. It just means he's not today. So it's important for Republicans to hammer him on that message. And unfortunately, one of the ways we can do that is by not taking back the Senate or the House and literally letting him choke on it. But we need to start focusing more towards the local end of the spectrum, the county clerks, the sheriffs, the everything else, right? And we need to start running strong candidates in those races across the spectrum, whether they be white, Black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. They need to reflect the community they're running in, right? So the city I live in is heavily Hispanic and, a large segment African-American Black, because we have a lot of oil field workers here. And you know what? These are people who will celebrate freedom and celebrate their ability to come out here and make $110,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year by working in this industry. And they look at the Democrats who are trying to take that industry away from them, that way of life away from them, and they're extremely negative towards it. So, of course, me working in oil and gas, that's the message I'm going to run with is, hey, you want economic security? That's the kind of things we got to support. But we need people like Felecia to go run in her local offices, right? And actually, I told my dad a long time ago when he was yelling at Bill Clinton, when Bill Clinton said the words, "It depends on what your definition of the word is," and he almost threw the damn TV out the well. I said, if you're that upset about it, go run for office. Do something to make that change. If you think you have a way of doing it better, then go and do it, right? You don't make change by doing nothing, right? The definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So we can keep focusing on the Senate, and we can keep focusing on the House, and we can keep focusing on the presidency, and forgetting completely about city councils and district judges and all this other crap. But until we start focusing on that stuff, we're going to continue, as Felecia said, to take those L's, because those communities are going to keep responding to the people who are there talking to them. They're not going to respond to people who are ignoring them and only come around once every 4 years, or in the case of the Senate, every 6 years, when all of a sudden they want their vote. They're going to want to talk to the people who talk every day. And I can tell you that if you get that local guy in there who builds that rapport that Corey talked about with that local community, he can then bring that higher echelon guy in and utilize his pathway, his connections to get into that community and build that rapport amongst the higher groups. But until we do so, we're just going to keep seeing more of the same. And we have to, as conservative Republicans, we have to say enough is enough with corporatists, with cronyism, and say we're not going to tolerate anymore. And any public official, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Communist, Socialist, that engages in those activities, we're going to call out and we're going to get rid of. And until we do so, we're going to look like hypocrites.
Amen. Amen. All right. I'm saving the best for last. What's your prediction, Felecia, for Black conservatism and over the next few years?
The Civil War is going to erupt in the Black conservative movement. The great debate is on the rise. It will either happen this year or next year. And the ideas will come to center stage right in front of Black audiences. That is what will happen and what will take place. Even though we talk a lot about the Blackseteers and whatnot, I don't believe in suppressing their ideas. I don't believe in canceling them. I believe in competition. And I'm saying, let's bring it all to the stage and let Black voters and let white conservatives decide for themselves. Like, no, we want conservatism to look like this because it's empowering. Or, if they want to keep with the things that haven't worked, well, keep taking those L's. That's up to them. But what I do want to see are these choices being brought to the mainstream forefront. And that's exactly what we're going to see happening. So I'm excited about it. Bring it on, Civil War.
All right, great. So I'll start with you, Felecia. Go ahead and plug your pluggables. Where can people find you?
Woo. Okay, so first of all, you beloveds can get the Conscious Conservative book set at FeleciaKillings.org. You can also join our movement and our media network at ConsciousConservativeMedia.net. That's where we're having some great discussions. We have wonderful content creators who have created their own channels there. And I want to say, like, even though it's free speech, I have no problem blocking folks who get out of pocket. So take that with a grain of salt. We demand respect because we're trying to grow, and healthy growth involves learning. It involves education. So that's what we're doing. And then also you can join me and the others in Twitter class at Coach Felecia.
All right. And as a former blockee of Felecia, Ross Schumann, plug your pluggables. Where can we find you?
So you can follow the blockee, the soon to be blocked again over here. It's at Ross Schumann on Twitter. I do believe I'm one of the handful of people that's been blocked and then gotten the unblock. Yeah. So that is that I can brag about that. I am the host of Shoe Bros Unfiltered on YouTube and other places. You can find that under Zero Gravity Media on YouTube. We also stream to Twitch. We stream Among Us. We do other stuff like that, trying to make conservatism look less like the corporate people and the policy people, and more like, hey, we're just normal ass people who just want to be left alone, and we're happy to play Among Us and other stuff too. But Jeff won't come play with me for some odd reason. I don't know what it is.
Me. I'll be coming on sometime.
All right, but other than that, look out here soon. We will be having a campaign announcement. We are following election laws. There are rules in place that we have to follow, which means I can't start accepting donations yet. But when I do, please help out. Please help out, get a person elected so we can start putting these conservative ideals in place. I know it sounds like the true politician pitch to ask for money, but it's expensive. It's fucking expensive. Like, I raised $60,000 running for Congress, and the guy that won raised that in like 2 hours. I did that in 3 months. So just telling you, it takes money to buy signs and to have people knock on doors and all these other things. So help out, and hey, go follow the podcast. Follow me on Twitter. I will troll the crap out of a lot of people, and I will post my blocks. When Felecia blocked me, go back and look. I screenshotted it, and I said, "Looky here, look at who blocked me."
You love getting blocked.
I do. It's almost a source of pride.
All right, so Mr. Corey Frazier, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Inspires the Block, also on IG. You also can find me Monday on Libre Network. Me and my brother Saul G, Brown Paperback Podcast, every Monday at 7, Wednesday at 7. We had a Purple Pill Politic where we straight shoot down the line. We're not waving no flag for no side. Also tomorrow, you can find me on LibreTV.co. Also here on Twitter for the Correct the Felon podcast. Also, my Middle Passage Media is my media company that I've developed and giving you good content with blogs. I'm trying to be like Jeff has inspired me to become a writer. So, I'm writing blogs and putting up information that I think is relevant. So.
Awesome. And both Ross and Corey have great shows. I would highly recommend them. I wish I had time to listen and watch into them more often. So I would definitely suggest watching their shows. Felicia's doing live streams every evening. What time? 7 o'clock Eastern?
6 to 7 inside the network.
Yes, great stuff. So definitely check them out. And thank you guys for participating. I really appreciate it. And thanks to the people who are watching. And we will see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you, Felecia. Thank you, Corey.
Bye.